Okay, let's see if we can't share this out and we'll go from there. Hey, Trev, how you doing, man? All right, we've got new guidelines that are popping up everywhere. Crazy times. All right, it looks like we're up here. Um, so we'll just let things go from there. All right. Hopefully, Trev, you can see everything okay. Give me some feedback. I see a few other people joining. Please say hi so I know who's there, so I can at least give you guys a shout out and all that sort of fun stuff. And we get the glare off the table. The original G, the OG is in the house, so that's cool to see. We got 8 or 10 folks. I'm gonna get cranking here, and we'll just get started. So, got the map under Plex. I'm gonna start beginning to start setting this little sucker up, and we'll have a look through the rules, have a look through all the charts and tables, all the counters and the cards and the whole shoot and match. So feel free to ask questions. All right, so yeah, a little glare top left. Okay, so we'll just inch across here a bit. So the map is interesting, and I probably should have the rules out in front of me so I can tell you all about the scale and fun stuff like that, because that's always generally interesting. If I can find it super duper quick. Hey, Chris, good to see you. Welcome. And here he goes. It's a 98 by 55 centimeter map, which is slightly bigger than 36 by 24, I believe. And it's got a nice coating on it that I think is somewhat waterproof and probably dumbass resistant when it comes to spilling junk on it, which is always nice. I am looking here, kind of a fun time scale. I know it's like an hour or 2 hours a turn or something like that. 5 kilometers per hex, 3 hours per turn, and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So map is interesting. The multiple terrain types in each hex, and what we're going to have to do as we go through playing this game is make determinations about which is the major and minor terrain in the hex, and then you're going to look at how that impacts you based on your mode that you're currently in. And as those of you that are not familiar with this, the less than 60 miles, okay, it's a blend of, or the bastard child of, or the genetically spliced together representation of CFS and NDC. And I said those acronyms just for our friend Dan Pancaldi. That's the Central Front System and the NATO Division Commander System, both games from SPI back in the day. And an interesting games in themselves, somewhat flawed. A lot of people liked the CFS system, its early iterations, and then it changed completely in volume 4 and 5 out of the magazines and became a very different game. And there's been some fan-made rules to bring it all together and make it all work. Some can argue that they did or did not do a particularly good job. That's up for debate, and I'm not here to talk about that. So this brings together somewhat the terrain usage model out of CFS, the attrition point model out of CFS, and then layers in from NATO Division Commander the modes of movement which impact your ability to move, obviously. Sorry, your formation mode, which impact your movement, tactical capabilities, your defensive stance, and other features. And it uses command points to allow you to change mode and move from, say, column formation or on the march or tactical mode to a hasty attack or prepared attack, whatever the case may be. And so everything's a function of movement points when you're playing the game. So pretty nifty. Those two systems were pretty nifty in of themselves. And what we've got here is a blending of those together to make you focus in on the command and control aspects of getting inside the decision cycles of your enemy. and there's 2 or 3 different designer notes, extended designer notes, and examples of play on the Big Board blog, which you can see. That's bigboardgaming.com. But more importantly, you can probably see that at trlgames.com, and lots more information there as well. Right, so let's have a look at the game per se and see what comes in the box. So we've got this very interesting map. Let's find some terrain we know. We know the Fulda location. You can see that Fulda takes up the full hex in most games. It would be a little dot here. And give you an example of scale. There is Frankfurt. So Fulda to Frankfurt. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 hexes. Not a lot of room. Wetzlar is up there, Marburg, all the battle areas you would know based on you being a war gamer and knowing, having played some modern war games. We've got West Germany over here. Obviously, this is where the East Germany is. And you've got Fritzlar up on the top right-hand side there near my empty coffee cup. And now, order of battle. So here you have the order of battle for the game. So we're dealing with the Central Front. Now we have the 1st Guard Tank Army. We have the 8th Guard Combined Arms Army. And we have the 3rd Army, all present. And there are units for all of those that we will have a look at. Really nicely laid out and very informative. I like it. If you've just joined, please say hi so we know who's here, and say hi to your fellow compatriots. We can all, you can chat amongst yourselves as well. The US 5th Corps, we've got 3rd Armored, 8th Infantry, 4th Infantry, and 5th Panzer from the West Germans, as well as some of those homeland brigades and battalions that were pretty key in some games. We've got Armored Cav, 11th Armored Cav, the different brigades from 3rd Armored, and obviously 8th is here as well, and all the different bits and pieces there. Okay, now the charts are really interesting, and a buddy of mine pointed this out. Hey there, Richard, Daniel. Hi guys, how you doing? Someone just pointed this out to me and it made me realize why I was appreciating this so much. A buddy of mine, Pete, and I are going to play this on the 17th of this month, and I dropped his copy off to him today, and he was immediately pulled the shrink, and we're sitting in this cafe, and he ripped it apart and having a look at things, and he noted, wow, these charts are really well laid out. There's a lot of them. This is just the movement chart here, right? And different column formations that you would have for mechanized and foot. Any additional movement point costs you would have. And he, mentioned this, and then I thought, well, yeah, he's probably right. It is pretty well laid out. Here's the nuclear attack table, the unit legend. So that's interesting. Here, we'll have a look at some of the different units, and we'll see the capabilities. We've got attack and defense, formation, and all this sort of business. Whether it's a cadre strength or not, and you'll probably flip these over at some point once they're no longer cadre, perhaps. That's me guessing. Artillery units, HQ units, the different colors for the different nationalities, and for ding-dongs like me who never served in the military, just in case you forget your different formation sizes. But then we go in, and let's go from the front, because this is the front. And we'll look in here, and we can see the postures chart, right? So here we can see all the different, there are different modes that you can take on here. Recon, shoot and scoot, barrage, close support. You can be deployed or moving or refitting, which is how you're going to remove those attrition points that you would accumulate in CFS, in the Central Front System, right? So you'll be able to refit and recover attrition points. I think it's 1 per turn. There's a maximum of 6 per unit, I believe, in this game, versus I think some of the Soviet units in CFS had 12. Different movement modes, all these different postures that occur. It's all fairly straightforward and really nicely laid out and well spaced. It's not all jammed together, right? More stuff here in regards to orders, right? Because you have to issue orders to your units. And you've got your bombardment tables. Sorry, you can't see that. Interdiction tables, AA tables there. Ground combat is differential based on a D10. And you're going to get everything, I think, is going to be a differential based on combat strength versus defensive strength with adjustments for attrition, the mode you're in, the terrain you're in, obviously, and any combat support, which would include and not be limited to air, electronic warfare, chemical strikes. If you're crazy enough to go nuke, you can nuke people as well. That's part of the rules. Defender combat support, here's all that stuff here, right? So that's all going to factor in here. And there's the terrain combat modifiers and the obstacles, right? And obstacles are things like rivers primarily, but it has a larger or smaller impact depending on the mode you're in, right? Very, very logical in its essence. And of course, once you're engaged with someone, things change. You may not want to stay engaged. And there is a method to remove yourself from being engaged. Let me just take a little sip of my drink here. I'm drinking a Manhattan. It's a pretty light one. Had to use some less than satisfactory rye in it because all the other stuff I have is very strong, and I've got to go pick up my son in an hour or so, so can't get festive yet. Let's see. Yeah, here's your disengagement die roll mods and all that sort of fun stuff. So you can probably see that there. All right, let's see what we got here. EW tables, intelligence tables. There's human intelligence as well as electronic warfare-based intelligence and electronic warfare impact. Supply is going to be a factor in this game as well to a certain extent. And then I think I already showed you the nuclear attack table and stuff like that. All right, so that's your charts and tables. Over here, we've got a couple of tracks to keep. Hey, Spartan and Tony, what's up, man? Hey, you get the stitches out of your butt yet, bud? Sorry, I had to throw that out there. Let's see. The ground combat chart's going to allow you to keep track of differentials. And there's weather tables here, combat modifier summary. And here's your timetables over here. Keep track of stuff, right? All the points. These points tables are going to be important because you're going to have command point chits here, aircraft, air support, chopper points and things like that here. So unlike the next war, which was the big old SBI title, and the Under the Iron Sun, which was recently released, that had a very detailed, comprehensive AA game in it, air war in it. You won't be doing that here. It's going to be somewhat more abstracted, and we're using points, but we are rolling for anti-aircraft effect, and there are a wide variety of anti-aircraft units and bits and pieces. So the rules. Let's see. I think we got 30 pages, 28 pages. Yeah, it's basically 28 pages of rules once you get down to it. I think at the very end here there's some. Oh no, it's okay. So it is 31. All right, 31 pages of rules. So nice big font format, notes in the boxes, clear sequence of play, and there's actually just been released an annotated sequence of play that you can download and print out as well as an extra. Rules talking about your posture, and it's going to tell you that if you're in screening mode, you are going to have a tactical movement mode. You're going to have a bombardment modifier. You are going to have this is a +3 here. If you can see that, let me get in there close. All right, defense modifier, attack modifier, all that sort of good stuff. And that's all going to change based on the posture you're in and the formation, the orders that you're under. All right. Nice clear layout. It's case-based, I guess, or point-based, as the case may be. Each unit is going to move individually. So you'll move a unit, combat with it, move it, maybe combat again, finish up, apply the attrition points that need to be applied to the unit, and then that unit may end up with a breakthrough, or it may end up adjacent to an enemy unit, or you may decide not to attack anymore, and then you move the next unit up. Very similar to the SBI model of, you know, fighting with that unit, and then when you move the next one adjacent, you're going to gain benefits from being from adjacency and things of that nature. So it'll be very familiar, I think, to a lot of folks if you've played any SBI games from back in the day at all. All right. This is interesting here, and I thought this would be worth talking about, this concept of obstacles, and which is typically rivers, right? And bridges and things of that nature. Let's see. Let me just see if I can find this definition here, because it will help you understand why the map looks the way it does. Yeah, a hex always contains one or more terrain types and may contain one or more terrain features. A unit moving into a hex pays the movement cost for one of the terrain types and one of the terrain features present in the hex. Which terrain type and feature must be paid depends on the unit's move mode. So I think that's pretty interesting. So that is, if you remember in CFS, they had those little triangles, little black triangles that said, oh yeah, you can go out this way, or you can go out this way, and that's one movement point to go that way. But if you go any other way, it's going to be, extra or more, or whatever the case may be. This is trying to, I think, replicate that or impose that effect on the game, and give you that feel. When we look at this terrain here, right, you can see here we've got probably heavy woods and light woods. I don't have the terrain chart. Let's flip this page over if I can tell you what these are. Okay, so hill 1, hill 2, obviously towns, right? And cities are the purple dudes. There's Frankfurt over here on the left for those folks that just joined. I see there's another 20 people here. Obviously, you can do force marches. You can have, you'll be impacted by terrain. When you move, may cause attrition. Certainly going into force march will cause attrition. And West German territorial forces and disengagement rules are here as well. This river crossing stuff is, you can choose to ram across the river or prepare yourself and go across the river. And he does give some definitions and explanations of what that would look like and what the cost is, not just in terms of movement points, but in terms of, there's prepared crossings, but in terms of attrition and all that sort of fun stuff. Attrition, here we go. So look, each regiment or battalion or company is going to have a fixed number of attrition points. And by the way, guys, please post messages if you're just joining, number one. Number two, if you can't see something or you want me to go back to something, if I can see the message flash up, I will certainly take care of it for you. And we're already 18 minutes in. We haven't even seen the counters. All right, I'm not going to go through all the rules because you probably don't want to get too deep into it. But I've read through these. I got a PDF of them a little while back, a couple of days ago, and I've gone through them and made my notes on them. And as you can see, not a lot of note taking because it all feels pretty straightforward here. So we're pretty excited about that. HQ's very important aspect of the game, and you're going to want to protect them, and you're going to want to make sure that they are in range to assist as needed. You can see here's a sample order chart with we're using command points and orders, and we're having I'll show you these counters in a second, but you've got these top level HQ. So here's the US 5th Corps, and this particular HQ is perhaps a brigade, and he's going to move, and it's going to tells you how much it's going to cost, how long it costs to issue that order, and the time it will take to deploy that. So now you're really starting to think about, okay, where am I going to go? What am I going to do? How am I going to get there? And what am I going to do after that? What are the follow-on forces going to do? What's my plan of attack? Where do I need to get to? How am I going to support this movement? on my flanks and in the rear and all that sort of good stuff. So it really does start to give you the pretty dynamic feel. You're going to have to do a little bit of thinking and planning and consideration of what you want to do and how you want to achieve it, right? So I think that's going to make it fun. But the combat system here looks pretty enticing as well, and we'll talk about that in a second when we get it here. Speaking of which, here it is, right? So combat sequencing is super straightforward. We're doing these initial combat differentials, taking the attack and defense strengths, looking at support, as I mentioned, electronic warfare, the combat support value or CSV value, and then the type of attack is going to drive, whether it's hasty assault, prepared assault, things like that. And obviously terrain effects will come into effect. Adjacent units impact, where they're already engaged, impacts the cadre rating, impacts the nationality, will impact. Chemical warfare is going to impact. And here's something that's interesting with chemical warfare that I found was fascinating. In this game, because of the time scale, you initiate chemical warfare, it's going to run at maximum strength for 8 turns. That's a lot of carnage. That kind of blows me away. Then it drops down to 2, then 1. But holy cow, that's a long time. 16 turns of either 2 or 3 modification. That's gonna blow things up for you. You want to zoom in more on the rules? I can hold things up a little closer, and I can certainly. Hey, John, how you doing, man? It's 3 kilometers per hex. So sorry, I mentioned that earlier in the game. It's not 3 kilometers per hex. It's 3 hours per turn and 5 kilometers per terrain hex. Okay. Sorry about that. Now we got to refocus here. Give you a little look at some of this stuff here. Yeah, I was just kind of reading some of this stuff to you, so maybe you want to see it more yourselves. Once you're going to put your breakthrough markers down, and there's and here's how all the different combat support capabilities work. There's helicopters and air combat, obviously artillery units, both rockets and missile based. And then you'll have to deal with CAS and AA and things like that. Anti-aircraft fire. Oh, Tony, I know what you're saying. You're a smart ass. Hey, David, good to see you. All right. Anti-aircraft against helicopters, detection. Now, this is an interesting aspect of the game that comes directly from NDC, from NATO Division Commander, where you don't know very much about what is in each hex and what the context or what the information is about the units that you're seeing. And here's, let me just read this to you, right? Because I think it'll make it's really only going to impact bombardment. But detection level influences the effectiveness of bombardments. A unit with detection level 0 cannot be bombarded, while a unit at detection level 4 could incur serious losses. So really, what the Americans might want to be doing, or what the Soviets might want to do, is if they're looking to interdict or interfere with the U.S. 5th Corps HQ, if they have no information on it, that's in Frankfurt somewhere and they're a gazillion hexes away, they're not going to be able to get an effective fire on it. But if they do have a high detection rating on it, they will be able to put effective fire down on that hex unit. Okay, EW has impact as well. There's some optional rules for intelligence, chemical warfare, and nukes. Nukes are free release. You both agree that you want to use nukes. There is no escalation program here. You just get straight after, and you will deal with the consequences of that. And it's pretty nasty. I'm not going to spoil it all for you, but you'll see that there's contamination. And let's see if there's also, you're going to get shifts on the victory conditions, of course. Once you elect to do that, it's going to push victory levels by 1. So I guess that's going to depend. And yes, the hex numbers are easier to see, Daniel. Let me show you. Let me just, you can see them already, but like, there you go, right there. I would agree that the hex numbers are a little bit hard to read on under an iron sky. All right, rule book. I think that was it. We got down to chemical weapons and bits and pieces. Yeah, bridge laying, defense works, weather, all sorts of good stuff there. Chemical warfare. I talked about nuclear warfare. The last thing was cards. Let me show you these cards, and then we'll have a look at the counters, okay? And then we'll wrap it up real quick because I didn't think this was going to take this long. So you've got these cards. Each scenario is going to give you a certain number of cards or a selection of cards for you to pick from, I think. And some of these are pretty interesting. So here's the Wild Weasel one. During current game turn, anti-air has additional -3 DRM, pretty neat. Special Forces has its little card. It's going to input raids and attrition points on units or HQs or whatever the case may be. You've got an AWACS, a couple of AWACS cards. You've got mass desertions that you can play. So NATO rolls a die for up to 5 combat units, and look, you're going to increase the attrition. So it's showing the impact of the Soviets' draconian impact on the eastern German forces. Operational maps is going to give you some sort of detection value increases. They're the US ones. Where are the Soviet ones? Soviet ones are over here out of my reach. Bear with me for a second. And here are the Soviet ones. No crisis in the North Hag. So in the next 4 turns, NATO air point rolls for the following top HQs have -3 DRM and snafu, right? I love this. Situation normal, all fucked up. It's right there on the... sorry for folks who've got their no headphones on and their kids just heard that. I was just reading. Captured officer, they get information and get some DRMs on combats. Code breaking, human intelligence, and these are really nice cards too. They're really well done. Lucky shot, direct hit on a NATO command post, kills everyone inside. Boom. Thanks for playing. All right. Some really interesting, Spetsnaz raids and stuff like that. Okay, air mobile assaults. All right, all sorts of good fun stuff, right? Let's see. Counters. Probably what you want to see next. Those who want to see more of the map, you would have to go back to the beginning of the video, and we'll show it later. Information counters, attrition counters, engaged, breakthrough, nuclear nastiness, whether people are spotted, EW effect, back of the counters on that guy. Now, I will say, right, these are a good thickness, right? You can see that. It is not awesome. It is not the super thick Great Battles of History Alexander Deluxe, so thick it won't fit in your clipper thick. But these are 5/8, I think. They're certainly not 1/4-inch guys. They are nice and large. I don't know what these are. I think these are going to do with putting the hours passed or required number of hours passed for something for the orders and formations, bits and pieces. These are modes that you can move into, I believe. We'll get to the combat units in a sec. Here are the orders that you're placing on your units. Blah, 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 blah. I've seen all that. I guess these are army demarcation lines. More bridgey things, HQs. See, you like the definition, bridgey things. And then these are all the different modes that you will be in. So search and not search and destroy. What did we say? Search and screen or something like that. Refit. There's the screening one. I don't know what SNS stands for now. We looked at that earlier on, and I told you. And on the back, I'm sure there's more. Yep. Okay. Now we can go back to the rule book and have a look at what all these mean, if you wish. Yeah, John. So it's going to model that by the mobile defense by you choosing the right defensive mode to be in. It's going to allow you to be engaged or disengaged more easily depending on the mode that you're in. Okay, here's the Soviet units. Each formation has a color bar across the top here so that you can keep your units together. And you'll see that this is one counter sheet, 8 counters across. I think there's 11 rows down, and this is the entire number of counters that will be on the map for the Soviets. You can see the attack value on the left and the defensive value on the right, and the range for this artillery is here. And I was not a fan when the early design discussions were going on about this game in one of the smaller groups about having the artwork and the icons on the counters, but seeing them in real life in IRL, it all actually looks fine because you've got black silhouettes and no one's attempting here to, trying to have a micro detailed M1 tank battalion or a tank icon jammed on these. It's got these black silhouettes which helps pop out this NATO symbol quite nicely, and I think they look pretty sharp in real life. No pun intended. So there you go, there's the counters. Now here's the US and East German counters. So you've got 5th Corps there. And keep in mind, just like CFS, this will potentially, if all the units sell, I suppose, he will look at expanding into the Northern Plains and other areas. So here we go. We've got 8th Infantry, 3rd Armored up top here. I think you can see that there. These German units. Pretty sweet. Pretty sweet looking, I must say. So the thing for me, the sweet spot for me with these types of games is it's a small company trying to do something different and fresh and bring wargaming to life, but also investing the time and the effort to artistically and from a user interface experience make the game more approachable perhaps than it was when it was, if it's like a reboot. This is kind of like, as I said, like the gene spliced CFS NDC, and out pops less than 60 miles, right? So I really appreciate folks that are taking this effort and this time to put thought into the artwork, put thought into the rules layout, put thought into the charts that are done here, and their layout and their ease of use to make the gaming experience so much richer and so much more fun and friendly. It's going to be great, I think. The proof will be in the play. I'll be setting up a scenario. Hey, Mike, good to see you, buddy. I'll be setting up a scenario later today, and I'll probably roll some dice around by myself a little bit and try and get a handle on things. And then I'll run some live play, maybe later tonight or maybe during the week at some point. But then on the 17th, we're playing the campaign game Opposed, and I'll do a full write-up on that. Once that's all done, I'll post up some sort of first play notes on what I think of the game and the system and all the rest of it, and hopefully we'll see how we go. Now, those that don't own a copy, and I don't know the exact details of how many have been made for sure for this. I do know that about 400 have been sold so far. Last time with Under an Iron Sky, I believe he only did 600 or 700 copies, something like that. And it is, so I don't know how many copies are going to be available. This is much, much less expensive than Under an Iron Sky. It's 80 euros or I think thereabouts. So my advice here is if you're interested, don't delay. You probably should jump out and try and get some. And as for, and so I think that's just a heads up for you, right? This is not GMT that makes 1,500 copies of games. Who knows if there'll be a second run of this like there was for Under the Iron Sky. Someone just mentioned in here that Fabrizio, hey, there he is, my friend. Good to see you. it would be interesting to play the Full Gap scenario side by side with this. It probably would be, but keep in mind that that scenario doesn't have that CFS, doesn't have air, doesn't have a lot of features and things that this does. And I don't know that there will be a lot of value in doing that comparison side by side. I thought about doing that, but I know how to hack that CFS system really easily as the NATO player, and there's no way the Soviets can win. So I would probably do that, and I don't think that would be a fair representation or a fair equivalence of the two games. This is its own unique beast. Fabrizio, I was just saying earlier on that this is like a gene spliced blend of CFS and NDC. So it's not CFS and it's not NDC. It's a fresh, unique game that takes some of the goodness out of both of those, certainly cleans up all of those chits and air support points and electronic warfare and chemical warfare and command points and all that messiness that was in NDC that was almost impossible to manage on those tiny little charts, and really brings that all together very nicely here. So look, I just wanted to share this with you. I'm obviously quite effusive and excited about it at the moment. I will let you know a little bit more later this week when I've finished playing a couple of turns of a scenario, and we'll come back with some comments and then obviously do the full campaign play. But I hope you all like it and what you saw, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thanks very much for the questions, and glad to be back doing some live streaming. Talk to you guys later.